Hey folks, I'm unwrapping here for CG Tuts. It's been a while since I've hosted a tutorial on CG Tuts, and it's good to be back. The subject of today's tutorial is real-world size, high poly, hard surface modeling. And the theme is a tattoo gun, also known as a tattoo machine. We're gonna spend a few lessons on modeling, one or two more parts on UV mapping, and one more part building the texture in Photoshop. The model you're looking at is made out of 29 different parts. All these parts are accurate by shape, size, and name, down to the last one. In the creation of this model, I didn't use a blueprint. I've mainly eyeballed it, and more or less basing it on this tattoo gun. So without further ado, let's delete this one and begin building our tattoo gun from scratch. We'll first start with the frame, this reversed L shape, which all the parts connect to. Before we start, I would first like to make sure that I'm working in centimeters. So I'll click the preference button right here beside the red key and go to settings, and yes, I'm working in centimeters, which means that every square on the grid is equal to 1 centimeter. Okay, let's make some room here so we'll have a bit more space to work in. I'll right click beneath the shelves tab here. I can remove the shelf, as well as the help line and the command line, range slider as well, and we can also get rid of the time slider. And yeah, why not, we can also get rid of the toolbox. So let's start by creating a cylinder. I'll hit spacebar and go to create Polygon Primitive cylinder, and just create a cylinder. I'll place it straight in the middle, and let's see, I want the radius to be 0.75. I'll set the height to 2 centimeters. This will be the width of our frame, and we'll set the subdivision axis to 40, so we'll have something more round to work with. Let's rotate it to 90 degrees on the Z axis. This is the top part, and let's raise it up in the air. The height of our tattoo gun will be 8 centimeters, so we'll set it to 8. Next, I would like to extrude the body out of this cylinder. Let's switch to front view, or sorry, to side view, and focus on it. I'll switch to polygon mode by hitting F11 and mark all of these bottom polygons and delete it. Okay, I'll switch back to perspective view, and now we need to fill in this void here. I'll hit F10 to switch to edge mode and double click on one of these edges. That would select the whole edge ring. Shift right click, fill hole. Next, we'll switch back to polygon mode and choose the bottom polygon, and I would like to extrude this polygon straight down to the grid. So shift right click, extrude face, and I'll choose the Z axis, and while holding down X on the keyboard, I'll mark the grid with the middle mouse button. Okay, as you can see in the reference, we've got this depression here, which I would like to create in the model. So let's switch back to our model. I would like to create the same depression here. So I'll duplicate this one and we'll move it over to the right. Now let's set the pivot for this one. It's straight in the middle, but I would like to move it to the top. So I'll hit insert and I'll choose the Y axis, and while holding down V, I'll snap it to the middle top. Now let's see. Let's move it a bit down something like this. Okay, something like this should be fine. I'm looking at this shape that I get here. Maybe we can get a bit more here. Okay, something like this should be fine. Now, what I would like to do is use a Boolean action to cut out this shape out of this shape. So, I'll make sure I'm choosing the first one and then shift click on the second shape, shift right click, Booleans, difference. That would cut out that shape, and this starts to look like the shape we need for the frame. We've got this division here that we've had from the start, which we actually don't need, so let's get rid of that. We'll hit F10 to switch to edge mode, delete this one, and we'll delete the same one on the other side, and that leaves behind vertices over here and over here. Let's delete those. Let's look at it from the side view. If we'll check out the original image, we've got this shape and we've got an extrusion to the left or to the back. So let's recreate that extrusion. First, I would like to create a few divisions here. So I'll shift right click and go to Insert Edge Loop tool. Then I'll create a division here. Now I don't get a complete edge loop, and that's because I've messed around a bit with this mesh, and we need to clean it up and delete its history so the edge loop tool will work correct on it, but at the moment that's fine with me since I can use it as is. We can just correct that as we go. So I'm creating the edge loop a bit more loosely here. I'll hit Q to end this session and I'll switch to the vertice view. And let's see, let's mark these two vertices and snap them to the grid by hitting X. Same goes for these, and these. And now we need to connect those sides. So let's see. We'll shift right click and choose Split Polygon tool. Snap to this side, snap to this side, hit Y to repeat the last action. And we'll do the same on the other side, hit Y. Okay, I'll switch back to the side view. Now I'll choose these two edge loops by double clicking on it and shift double clicking on the second one. And I'll move them a bit higher. Something like this, I think, should be fine. Okay, and now I would like to extrude this part here. So I'll switch to the face mode and choose this face here, and I'll switch back to the side view. Shift right click, extrude face, and we'll extrude it on the Z axis to this grid point. We'll scale it only on the Y axis until it sort of snaps to the top grid. Something like this should be fine. Okay, so let's see, that was 0.665, and we'll copy this value and paste it to the Z axis as well. We want the width of the frame to remain the same, so we don't scale on the X value. And let's switch back to the side view. We'll add one division in the middle here. We'll shift right click, choose Insert Edge Loop tool, and we'll add a division approximately in the middle here. And actually I can move it a bit back. Something like this. I would like to make this section a bit more round. While the edge loop is selected, I'll shift right click and choose Bevel Edge. And I'll set the segments to 5. We'll set the offset to be a bit higher. Maybe even a bit more segments, let's say 6. And we'll offset a bit more. So we've got a rounder shape here. So next we'll extrude this part here. We'll switch to face mode and choose this face here. Switch to the side view. We'll shift right click, extrude face, and we want to extrude it 5 centimeters. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and another 3/4 of a centimeter. So something like this. Now in the reference we've got this sort of round shape, and I'm going to recreate something similar. So for that we'll duplicate this shape. Let's move it over to the right a bit so we can see what's going on here. Let's switch to the face mode, and we'll get rid of all these, and we don't need these as well. Let's see, we want only 1/4 of the top, so we'll delete these and we'll center the pivot. Spacebar, modify, center pivot. Okay, actually we can move the pivot to this point here and move it over here. Rotate it, let's say 180 degrees. Okay, and we'll snap it to this point on the grid, and we'll snap it to the shape. Now let's just make sure these parts end at the same point. Switch over to the vertex view and choose these 4 vertices and snap them to the bottom shape by holding down V and moving those. Okay, let's switch back to the perspective view, and let's focus on this shape for a second. I would like to fill this hole here. Let's move this bottom shape down a bit so we can work on it. I'll switch to edge mode and choose the edge ring here, and I want to fill this hole. So shift right click, fill hole. I want to add a division here, so I'll shift right click, split polygon tool, I'll snap to this point and snap to that point. Now I would like to connect these 2 shapes together, or rather merge those. Other than that, I actually forgot to add a division here to the first shape, so I'll switch to the side view and insert an edge loop here. Make sure it snaps to the grid. So I would like to merge these 2 shapes, and once they are merged, these 2 faces won't be necessary. So I'll delete this one and I'll delete this one. Let's snap this shape to the top one. Okay, and now we can merge those. Choose both of them, hit spacebar, mesh, combine, and now they are one complete shape. We'll go to edit, delete by type, history. All we have left to do is merge the vertices. If I'll switch to the vertice mode, I can choose one vertex here, and if I move it in space, you can see they are not really connected. So what we need to do is merge those vertices. I'll choose both vertices here, shift right click, merge vertices to center. Okay, and I'll move over to the next corner, choose these 2 vertices and hit G to repeat the last process, and same goes for that corner, G, and this corner, G. Okay, next I would like to soften up this corner, round it up a bit more. Let's switch to edge mode and mark this edge here, and we'll bevel it. Shift right click, bevel edge. Now let's set the segments to 8 and the offset to 0.5. Now we've got way more divisions than we actually need here, so let's get rid of some of those. Switch over to side view and let's mark all of these, get rid of those, and let's hit 4 to get the transparent view and get rid of these as well. Just these and these. And we can get rid of this one as well. Okay, so we've got a cleaner object now. However, we have some unnecessary vertices probably going on here. We've got these 2. Now we need to make a bit more sense here. we can't have these divisions end up in actually in nowhere. We'll have to complete the loop for this one and for this one. Shift, right click, split polygon tool, and we'll first eyeball it and then we'll straighten it up. So this is number 1, hit Y to repeat the last process, and this is number 2. Okay, let's hit Q and switch back to side view. Now let's straighten these out. Switch to vertex view and mark this one, and I want to straighten it onto the Z axis. So by hitting V and moving it with the middle mouse button, that would straighten it to this vertex. We'll straighten this one, and this one. Okay. Let's switch back to the other side. This edge and this edge could have some more of a softer transition. Mark this edge and this edge. We'll shift right click, go to bevel edge, and let's see, 3 segments is fine. Let's offset it. We can merge these two edges together. Now let's repeat the process for this one and this one. Hit G to repeat the last process, and we can add one more segment here. 4 segments should be fine. We can offset it a bit more, and we've got a very smooth transition here. Now we've got some very ugly divisions here, and I would like to have a much more of a cleaner model. So I'll switch to side view, and again we'll need to delete these edges and recreate them in a much nicer way. So let's mark these and delete those. Let's see, we need to delete these and these. Same goes for the bottom ones. Okay, we'll merge the vertices, mark those two, and shift right click, merge vertex to center. Great, now we need to do the same for the other side, and I'll focus on it just to make sure I'm choosing just these 2 vertices. Shift right click, merge vertices, merge to center. Okay, same goes for the bottom ones, and there's edges here that I haven't deleted, and these 2 need to merge vertices, merge to center, and we got these 2 as well. We'll hit G to repeat the last process. Now let's reintroduce the divisions. Shift right click, split polygon tool. We need to merge these 4 with these 4, and same goes for the other side. Hit Y to repeat the last process. So now that I've connected these 4 edges on both sides, I would like to attend to these 3 edges. I wouldn't connect those to each other. That would start to get a bit too close to my taste. I would like to connect those to the other side here. And I've already got these 2 divisions here, and I can use that. So let's mark these vertices and align those with the top ones. Okay, same goes for the bottom ones. Align it with the bottom ones. Shift right click, split polygon tool. We'll merge this one with this one. Same goes for the other side and the bottom ones. Next, I would like to connect these 2 vertices and these 2 vertices in an edge ring. Again, I'm still in the split polygon tool, and I'll snap to this one, and I don't need to be too accurate at this point. I can eyeball it at the moment and then correct it once I'm done. And now all I need to do is just align those. So switch over to side view. We'll switch to vertex view. First we'll align this one with the opposite side. We're aligning on the y-axis. And we'll do the same here. Okay, so we've got a very nice division going on here. So next I would like to bevel all the corners. But before we do that, let's do a little history cleanup here. We'll go to Edit, Delete by Type, History, just to delete any unnecessary history that might get in the way a bit later. Now let's select this edge, double click on it to select the whole edge ring, and it doesn't select the whole edge ring, so we'll have to add to it. Shift, double click on the next one, and so on. As you can see, I've got all the edges selected. Let's just make sure of that. And now let's bevel those. Shift right click, bevel edge, and let's see, we can offset it a bit. Get a bit more rounder and a smoother shape here. This is approximately it. So I've got an offset of 1 and 3 segments. Now we need to soften a bit some of these edges here. As you can see, we've got some edges that are hardened, like these, and probably the bottom ones as well. Okay, and we need to soften those up. So what we'll do is select all the edges, shift right click, and choose soften harden edge, soften edge. Okay, and last, I think this part is a bit too long, so I think we should shorten this up a bit. Let's just something like this. Next, I would like to create punches for the screws of this model. And what I mean by punches is creating cylinders and then boolean those out of the model. I'll first start by creating a new cylinder. Go to create, Polygon Primitives, and we'll create a cylinder. And okay, we'll make the subdivision a bit higher, let's say 30. Should be fine, it's nice and round. And we'll set the height to be 4 for the time being. Let's rotate it on the x-axis to 90. Let's align it on the x-axis to 0, so it will be straight in the middle. And the radius is much too high. Let's switch to front view and hit 4 so we can really appreciate it. Let's say 0.3. And let's see. The first one begins right here, I think. Yeah, somewhere around here. Let's duplicate it. And the second one is approximately here, I would say. Let's even align it with this line here. Okay. Now, even though in real life these two go all the way, I would like to avoid the unnecessary divisions that would create on the other side and have those go just halfway. Now, let's duplicate this one and let's switch to side view. This one needs to be over here. Now, its radius is too large, so let's scale it down on the X and Z, not on the Y. Let's say 0.7. Let's see how that works. We can even have it to 0.5. And this looks about right. And we can actually align it with the grid. Okay. And let's duplicate this one. And we'll switch over to the front view and rotate it on the y-axis to 90 degrees. And over here at the top, we have another screw. We've got this fastener here at the top, which fastens the tube to the frame. So we need to create on the other side the hole for the screw. And again, we don't need to go all the way. Something like this should be fine. And let's just make sure it's aligned in the center. Switch to top view. And we need to align it with the grid. Okay. We've got one more punch that I would like to create, and that's the front one where the tube is. Let's duplicate this one and raise it up. We need to scale it down a bit on the X and Z. So 0.6 is actually fine, and I'll set the scale X to 0.5, as this hole is not perfect. Well, it is perfect, but if we'll look again at our picture, you can see the hole is more of an oval hole, and that's because we have to fasten and bring those two pieces together, and we need to separate the top part in half. So let's create a rectangle. We'll go to create, Polygon Primitives, cube. Let's place it straight in the middle. We'll set it the X to 0, and let's see. We'll set it to 0 on the Z as well. And let's see on the side view. We'll snap it to the grid at this point. Okay. And okay. Let's scale it down on the height. And let's see. It's a bit too wide, so we'll set it to 0.05. Maybe a bit more, 0.07. Okay, so we are ready to punch out all these out of the main shape, the frame. And before we do that, I would like to duplicate these punches for future use. To do that, we first need to rename stuff here. So let's see. The first one is the frame, and these are punch 1, punch 2, punch 3, and so on. If I'll duplicate those, the duplicates would be 7 to 12, and I don't want that. So I'll mark all of those, group them, duplicate the group, and then ungroup the first group. And we can get rid of this group. And now we have the second group with the original names. We'll rename it to punches and hide it. Now we can punch those shapes out. Let's mark the frame and then shift select the first punch, shift right click, go to booleans, difference. Okay, and there's our hole. We'll repeat the process, shift select the next one, hit G, shift select, G, shift select, G, shift select, G, and the last one, shift select, G. Okay, we actually don't have the exact shape that I needed here. So Control Z, and okay. So this one needs to go all the way to the back. So let's scale it on the Y-axis. And now we'll select the frame and then shift select the punch, shift right click, go to booleans, difference, and we'll repeat the process here. So okay, now we are ready to go. So from this point on, if you don't plan on animating this model in any way, you will probably be okay by leaving it as is. However, if you do plan on animate, and frankly, even if you don't plan, you will probably encounter irregularities in the model once you'll get into the texturing stage. And that's because we've got edges here that's going nowhere. All these edges here, they don't connect to anything else, as well as these. They just pop up here and don't connect to anything. And same goes for these. We've got these edges that's not connected to anything. If we really want to avoid any irregularities and artifacts in the model, we really need to clean up this model. So fortunately, Maya provides us with a very useful cleanup tool. We'll shift right click, go to cleanup, and we've got this pop-up window. Now these are the settings that I'm using. I would like to clean up matching polygons, apply to selected objects, concave faces, and non-planar faces. And we'll hit cleanup. And now you can see that Maya has connected all the edges, and we actually now have a much more sensible model. However, my attempt to create a few unnecessary edges in this process, and we can get rid of those to reduce some of the weight while rendering. So let's see. We've got here, let's switch to the edge mode. Let's see, we've got this edge here, and we actually get this division here that's actually going nowhere. So it's this one, and this one. Let's see, this one and their corresponding edges, and over here as well. You don't have to have all this X here. Same goes here, and this one, and I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. So let's delete those. No need for double edges. Okay, I think that's it. So that left behind a few vertices. Let's switch to vertice mode and mark all of these vertices, delete the unnecessary ones. All the edges are connecting all around, but we don't have any unnecessary edges. Now we need to repeat that process throughout this model wherever we made the punches. It's a very long and tedious process, so I'll pause the recording and we'll continue on after the model is a bit more clean. So I've finished up the cleaning up process. As you can see, we've got no double edges and no unnecessary edges. Next, I would like to create the screws in the holes. And for that, I would use the punches we've created. Let's bring back the outliner. And we've got all sort of history here from the Boolean action. So let's delete the history here. Make sure the frame is selected. We'll go to Edit, Delete by Type, History. And that's a bit more clean here. Let's rename this again to Frame. So we've got punches here. Let's reveal it. And let's see, we want to create a screw. So let's duplicate this one, tear it apart from the group, and let's hide the group for the time being. So this will be our screw. Let's first start by scaling it on the y-axis to something a bit more likely, like 0.05. Look at it from the side view. It needs to be in the socket, and it can be a little bit smaller than the hole itself, so we'll get some nice ambient occlusion around the edges. Let's say 0.98 for the X and the Z, and we'll place it something like this. But before we place it in its place, let's bring it back out, and now let's focus on it for a second. We need to shape it as a screw, or as a screw head. This will be an Allen type of screw, so we need to create the niche for it. So let's create a new cylinder. Go to Create, Polygon Primitive, Cylinder, and we'll make it here. And let's see, we need to make the subdivision axis to 6. Since the niche has 6 sides, we'll rotate it on the x-axis to 90 degrees, and we'll place it at the same location as the screw head. Actually, we'll snap it to the middle here, on the side view and on the front view. We need to scale it down, scale the radius to, let's actually look at it from the front view. Let's say 0.1. That looks just about right. It needs to go about halfway. This looks just about right. So we'll mark the screw head and shift select the punch. Shift right click. Booleans, difference. Okay. We do actually need to run a cleanup here, but if we'll encounter any artifacts, it will be very, very small and insignificant. So let's center the pivot here. Spacebar, modify, center pivot, and let's place it in the socket. Okay, something like this. Now let's duplicate this one and we'll place it here. Let's snap it to the middle. Okay, we'll need to duplicate it again, go to front view, and we'll rotate it on the y-axis to 90 degrees. Let's snap it to the middle of this socket here. Let's place it here, and let's see, we need to scale it down. Something like this. Okay, let's place it in here. Snap it to the middle here. Now let's switch again to front view, and we'll duplicate this one more time and place it here. So snap it to the middle here. We'll switch to side view, something like this, and we need to scale it to half the size, I think, so 0.5. Yep. The frame is complete. Very, very nice. So this shape is the most complicated one of all the shapes in this model. In the next lessons, we'll run through the shapes a bit faster. So this brings to a conclusion lesson 1. Let's jump over to lesson 2.